Welcome to the Let's See class, where we take a trip to the mud pit and learn a little bit about Barrier Island ecology. Let's go! A barrier island is home to a variety of different ecosystems. The first ecosystem we see is the sand dunes, which lead us out onto the beach. And if you look up and down the beach ecosystem, you can see that it runs next to a body of water we call an estuary. Further off in the distance, you can see that there's a maritime forest ecosystem on our barrier island that leads us to the salt marsh. One commonly found animal on our beaches is the cannonball jelly, a harmless species of jellyfish.
The grassy patches you see on the beach are actually called the RAC Line, and RAC starts with a W. The RAC Line is actually mostly made up of marsh grass. This marsh grass is commonly known as Spartina or Spirabilus grass, which washes up on the shore during most high and low tides.
This is driftwood. Anything that exists out in the ocean is going to be home to a lot of different critters. Out in the open ocean, there's not a great deal of structure, so animals will find ways to live on floating platforms such as driftwood. If we were to break this open, inside you would be able to see that it is riddled with tunnels and other similar structures. These are made by shipworms. They are a species of clam that eats wood.
As the tides continue to push layers of rack and sand further up the beach, you begin to see that a layer of sand and rack forms into a hill. These hills are more commonly known to us as sand dunes. The more time that a dune has to form, the stronger that dune will be, which is a good thing because we want strong dunes to protect us from hurricanes or crazy naturalists here on Barrier Island. The sand dune ecosystem forms over a long period of time in a place that used to be the beach ecosystem. This is a process that we call succession, where one ecosystem changes into another over time. The dunes aren't just a hill of sand. In fact, probably the most important part of the sand dunes are the plants that grow on top of it. The roots of these plants grow down into the sand, holding it in place and helping it to keep its shape. The sand dunes can be home to a variety of different plants, including sea oats, Spanish bayonet, and panic grass. When walking the beach on a barrier island, you could find all kinds of critters. You might find an animal like the striped hermit crab, who crawls around carrying his house on his back. Other times, you might not actually find the animal, but you might find clues that they've been there. For example, the shell or molt of this speckled lady crab. Or the single claw of a ghost crab. Horseshoe crabs, or parts of their shells, are also another common sighting on the beaches of barrier islands. Even though their name says horseshoe crabs, these animals are not true crabs. They are much more closely related to spiders and scorpions than they are to other crabs. Barrier islands are also home to a variety of different shorebirds, such as gulls, pelicans, and terns, among many others. And of course, no mention of the creatures that live in our estuary and salt marshes are complete without mentioning the eastern oyster. During the warmer months, it's even possible to find sea turtle eggs because loggerhead sea turtles will come up onto the beaches here to lay their nests. Sometimes, harmful jellyfish species like this lion's mane jelly will wash up on our beaches. Be careful if you find a jelly washed up. Even a dead jelly can still sting. You don't have to go all the way to a tropical beach to find colorful corals. We have colorful sea whip corals on our barrier island. These little animals actually live in large groups, so tons of animals make up one coral. And those are just some of the animals and wildlife that you can see on the beach. Underneath the waves of the estuary, there are countless other critters just out of sight. One such example is the bottlenose dolphin. An estuary is a place where fresh and salt water meet, mixing together to form brackish water. The freshwater portion of our barrier island comes from the North Edisto River, which carries along dirt, pieces of sticks, trees, and leaves that break down to help add nutrients to our beach. The transition as you move off of the beach into the dunes and towards the salt marsh is characterized by plants that are often found in maritime forest ecosystems. These plants have adapted to live in areas near the sea, where there is a lot of sun, very little shade, sandy soil, lots and lots of salt, and little fresh water. Do you know what kind of plant fits that description perfectly? It's a cactus. We have prickly pear cactus here, proving that the desert is not the only place you can find cacti. Another plant that can be found in these areas is the state tree of South Carolina, the palmetto tree. The salt marsh ecosystem is an example of both a grassland ecosystem and a wetland ecosystem. Although very little of our Earth's surface is covered by salt marshes, these ecosystems are responsible for a large portion of the nutrients, plants, and animals that life around Earth depends on. One of the most famous residents of the salt marsh is the fiddler crab. At high tide, the salt marsh is inundated with salt water, which picks up and carries away the dead marsh grass that we later see wash up on the beaches, the beginning of the sand dunes. Small snails called marsh periwinkle snails have adapted to the high tide coming into the marsh by climbing up the spirabolous grass as the water gets higher. Lots of low-country animals can find their food source in the salt marsh, whether it be raccoons, deer, fish, birds, or even microscopic animals we can't even see.